and I also would not do too much. Less is more most of the time. I know it's tough when you're starting a business, but you want to build a brand.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Awesoming's podcast, where we highlight people pursuing their definition of, you guessed it, awesome. So buckle up and get ready for some more success story adventures and failures from Kentucky's tech and entrepreneur community. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Awesoming podcast. I'm really excited because, one, I'm sitting across the table from my good friend who's already starting to chuckle, Chase Fairchild. And today's gonna be a bit different. We're recording a couple episodes that we'll be releasing in a marketing series. For those of you who don't know, Chase is a very talented communicator, storyteller, and he does exceptional work in the marketing industry. And I'm not gonna go into all of his background. We did that a while ago, but Chase, give a quick recap, and then I'll set this back up before we dive into some content.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to be here, Garrett. Like you said, I've worked in the marketing industry and have been pretty fascinated with business and entrepreneurship my whole life. And so, I'm really excited to dive into some of the fundamentals that I've kind of discovered with my team and some of our clients over the years about some good marketing for small business. We really help small business owners, transform their business and grow their business with good marketing fundamentals. And so I'm excited to kind of do a deep dive to answer some questions from some founders and hopefully come up with a really practical series that can help people in a real way.
Sweet. That's perfect. You just said it right there, Chase. So for those of you who are listening, first of all, thanks for taking the time. We'd love to hear some feedback from you after and during this episode. This first little bit's going to be going back to the basics. And that's something that we have realized. Sometimes it's so easy to get lost in the sauce. If you focus on the sizzle of things, but really you want to make sure that your, what we say at Awesome Inc., your hot dog, the main thing is actually the main thing. So Chase, with that being said, what would you say is good marketing?
This could be a 2-hour long question. But I think the reality is, going back to like my football coaching days, I played football and coached football for a while. And the best thing to do is to master the fundamentals. And I think fundamentally marketing is talking about your product. It's building relationships with people in the context of your product. And that, ask me tomorrow, I'll probably have a different definition. It's something that I think is a moving target that's always changing a little. But I think for the most part, marketing is building relationships. It's informing people who you are and why you matter as a business.
What would you say most marketing is these days? And maybe go into that a bit more of where does it miss the mark in terms of clear communication? Because I know that's something you take pride in.
Totally. I think, for me to be able to talk about how marketing misses the mark in today's world, I have a very narrow perspective, obviously, just from clients I've worked with and brands I observe and interact with. So, my perspective is quite limited in the sense of what's missing the mark. But I think there's a lot of unintentional marketing. There's a lot of companies out there who use kind of the same old tactics, the same old deal, and they're just saying if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of thing. And so I think it's more what the people are not doing. They're not taking advantage of kind of this new reality, which is people have more money to spend than ever before. There's people who are taking advantage of the digital space, who are creating digital products and content and creating sales funnels. That's something. It's not sexy, but it's effective. And I think a lot of times, people really try to go cute and creative or clever over clear. And so what happens is that ends up being, confusing. Your clients don't know what you do, why it matters to them, or how they should get in touch with you.
Yeah. I mean, for me, one thing to that specific point is there is a very successful clothing outdoor brand, I'm not going to say their name, obviously, that their marketing, whenever I get a newsletter, which is probably 2 to 3 times a week at least, they'll say something really cool for their tag to get my attention. But guess what? When I click on it, I literally have to scroll all the way down to find whatever product it is or whatever article, and it's never really clear. So guess what I do? I trash can it in my email.
Right. I think there's a lot of nuance to this too. So, let's say, for example, that you're a financial advising firm. And obviously there's a lot of regulations and compliance issues with finance. But, we all know, like, it's kind of a confusing industry. But we all want to think about retirement. We all want to, for the most part, that's the wise thing to do, is to invest, and people work with advisors all the time. But it's also an industry with high barrier to entry. There's a lot of buzzwords like annuities and family liquidity events, and there's all of this like slippery lingo. And when you're talking about to the public, we don't know this lingo. We don't understand it. It's like you're speaking a different language. And so I think the best marketing really translates things that are complex and makes them simple, and really positions them as the solution to the problem the customer is facing. My problem is, hey, I'm insecure about my finances. I don't know who I should listen to. Should I listen to this guy or that? Everybody's saying different things. People are making money in crypto. That scares me, blah, blah, blah. I think a financial advisor has a great opportunity to come in and say, look, I understand. Finances are really confusing. It's really tough, and it can feel like you have FOMO or you have anxiety. But look, we have a really simple system that if you follow it, you're going to build wealth that will last. Here's how we get started. Schedule a call and let's go over and get a free assessment. Something like that. It's really more relational.
You take off that pressure of the things that we create in our head almost.
Totally. I mean, I think we need to start. I think the biggest mistake, can be summed up in marketing and branding, not branding necessarily, marketing and advertising has become way more transactional than relational. And we need to have a return to relational, because it's people talking to people.
Literally, to follow that right up, Chase, what would you say is your go-to, or maybe a couple of your go-to resources for staying updated on news, tech, marketing, business trends, all the stuff that you would say you value?
I read a lot, and I listen to a fair amount of podcasts, but I always try and take a note of trends in kind of my own organic way. There's not really a system to it, but I just start to notice things when I travel. From a trend perspective, I like to see what's important. Oh my gosh, this is like we were just in Flagstaff a couple weeks ago. We went to this college bar called the Mayor or something like that. But they had this really cool. They had like an Airstream like camper with a window cut out of it. It was like a DJ booth, and then upstairs was this rooftop bar with. It was just really simple. It wasn't a tall building. It was a 2-story building, and they just had this really cool. It just felt really different. I was like, I wonder if this is a trend or is this just a style out here. So I just pay attention to that sort of stuff because I'm interested in it genuinely. And I do think sometimes it informs, especially when working on a branding project or we're doing like a brand experience where we're working with restaurants and we're trying to think about how do we capture a feeling while you're eating or enjoying this business or whatever. So there's something kind of ethereal, organic that I just try and keep my finger on. There's a few great people I can think of who do that naturally. And I try and be like them, but I would say they're borderline futurists. And one of those guys is a guy named Scott Galloway, who is a professor at Stern, NYU, business professor. He's a writer and entrepreneur and an investor. And he's just really creative, and he's kind of all over the place. His style really matches up with the way I like. So I read his books, listen to his podcast, done some of his free webinars, that sort of stuff. The second person that I really love is Naval Ravikant. He's an investor and like more of a philosopher. He's been on he does a lot of Twitter, like tweets a lot, just little one-line nuggets of wisdom. And his stuff has probably made the biggest impact on me. Reading some of his tweets and listening to his insights. There was actually a guy who you like this guy, Jack Butcher.
Oh yeah, I love Jack. He's a really good friend of one of my friends, Zach Jenkins, who's on this podcast before.
He illustrated a book that this guy put together, basically like an almanac, like an unofficial book of Naval's wisdom. And I read that last year, and it's the best book I've read in the last 5 years.
Sweet.
It just has so much in it. You can read it over and over and over, and has layers.
Ogres have layers.
Ogres have layers.
Sorry.
And then I think the last person I'll say is Donald Miller.
Yeah.
He's been a big influence. We're StoryBrand certified and have learned that, and seen a lot of great benefit from that framework and clarity. He's done a really great job about like democratizing business education with Business Made Simple. And so I really like them. But there's a lot of folks that I like listening to. But those are a few of the main ones that I make it a priority to listen to pretty regularly.
So again, to say those, you have Scott Galloway, Naval. What was his last name?
Naval Ravikant.
Naval Ravikant. Wow, that's a mouthful.
Spelled Ravikant.
Cool. Naval Ravikant, Jack Butcher, and then Don Miller with StoryBrand. Yeah. Again, if you confuse, you lose. That sums up StoryBrand in one sentence to me. So again, thanks for sharing those people. Highly would encourage you guys, if you're listening, to go check them out. Chase, to throw it right back to you, what would you say is the best way for you, as someone who leads a business, you lead a team, to figure out who your target demographic is, again, the people you're trying to reach? And to that, is there any resource that you collect actual data from to help narrow or find that demographic?
I wish I had a better answer for this, but really it's just doing the legwork of doing the research yourself.
Oh man, you're saying do the work. Yeah. Oh gosh, that's tough.
I'm sure there is one. Like I said, I'm not really in the technician space. So like Stephanie is our account director and does most of our marketing campaigns and management. And so, we really start by just tackling, demographics and psychographics. And we start looking at like, you can narrow down, just like when you're creating an ad set on Facebook or Instagram, you start with where they are, who are they? If it's a brand for men, like you just narrowed it by 50%.
Yeah.
If it's men 20 to 30, there you go. Some narrow. If it's men in the Southeast, if it's men in Lexington, Kentucky, so you just keep narrowing it down. The objective really kind of informs the demographic. So if you start with your objective, okay, so for example, there's this company, it's called Wilderness. That's their Instagram handle, at least. I'm not sure if it's the company name, but they do like guided trips out west to national parks, and you can ride ATVs and, motorcycles. And it's really kind of a curated event. It's bougie camping. And, they have male trips and then co-ed trips. And, if they're trying to reach guys in Kentucky, they're going to look for guys who are interested in out west. So what do they like? Well, they like hiking at the gorge. They like whitewater rafting and in West Virginia. They like this type of brand. They like Patagonia and North Face and, these sort of things. So they start to create their interest in the demographics and some kind of build some of those ad sets out. And then what we do, and everybody does this in some ways, like we build customer profiles and say, oh, this is Garrett. He's 26. He loves hiking. He's really into 70s Southern rock. That's
the long hair. Yeah,
he's a bit of a wild card, but he's a city boy, but he loves the outdoors. So he doesn't know how to pitch a tent. You can get really specific. And in some ways it works at a small scale, but you're really just trying to talk to somebody. When you're creating a piece of content, the more specific you can get, people say if you're talking to everybody, you're really talking to nobody. I can't be talking to Garrett specifically at an intimate level and also be talking to my grandmother. It can't do that. When you talk to companies and they're like, well, who's your target demographic? Well, everybody. Really, 18 to 90-year-old people, all tax brackets, all political parties, all religions, all interests. They're all in your... Yeah. That's the IRS.
That's fair. Watch out. That's really good.
Yeah. And so I think, there are definitely some tools, and I'm sure, there's stuff out there I'm just not familiar with. But when we go about writing a piece of content, for me, when I write on LinkedIn or write on a blog or whatever, I'm thinking about a clients of mine. I'm thinking about one of my friends, Michael, who is an entrepreneur who has a lot of businesses. I think about my client who's a dentist, knows how to, is an expert when it comes to all things dental, but doesn't understand necessarily the inner workings of running a business in the digital world and talking about it and making sense of data. And so I'm talking to them. When I go out to write, you could put dear so-and-so, and I'm talking to them like I'm writing them an email in some ways. And so that helps me. Everybody's got their own process, but I think if whoever's listening, I think, one key to just being a better communicator is just write to somebody in your head.
Yeah.
Create somebody fictional, create somebody real, but make sure they fit the mold of what you're trying to do.
All right, Chase. So we just talked about demographics, people, helping them with resources. And you actually mentioned a couple of people in mind when you make a post. Maybe it's your friend Michael who's an entrepreneur, or your friend who owns a dental practice. What are some strategies, might be the best word I'm thinking of, strategies or tactics that you have found effective with Bolt, and then also helping clients to grow your clientele, to fill your pipeline? Yeah. What are a couple of things that you think people could benefit from?
Yeah, I think about like for us, and this is what we're getting better at for Bolt is, our strategy is content creation in some ways is talking about some of this. I mean, I'm doing part of our strategy right now. We're here talking about marketing, and I'm hoping that there'll be somebody down the road someday that hears this and we'll learn something, and maybe could eventually come give me a call, and it could lead to a relationship. So you're really planting a lot of seeds. When it comes to like what we do, where we're, service-based and tend to be more of a partnership in a lot of our businesses, with a lot of our businesses, it's more like planting seeds. You're building relationships and opportunities come along. You've heard the phrase top of mind awareness. Real estate agents do this. Financial advisors do this. They're just trying to be out there generating relationships so that when somebody has a real estate need, they think of whoever. So, I really think simplicity is the key, when it comes to try and keep the pipeline full. Like, pick the thing that makes the most sense for your business. So if you're a roofer, and it's a roofing company, you got to think about how people are engaging with roofing company. Like, people, how do you? Like, you're probably, if you're a roofing company, you're probably not going to have 100,000 Instagram followers. You're probably not going to have a super engaged audience on a roofing company. I mean, I could be proven wrong, I'm sure, but most people search for roofing companies on Google or not Bing. People Google it, and they find it. They just type roofers near me, and then that's why SEO is so important, or search engine marketing, is important, is because that's how people are finding you. So if I'm a roofing company, what do I need to do? I need to invest in a site that prioritizes SEO, and I need to take my ad dollars and put them into search engine marketing campaigns. I'd probably avert some of those ads from social out, the efforts too, like the energy spent on like keeping up a Facebook page, or, and like I said, this is my opinion. So it's totally just mine, what I've seen work and not work. I don't, and based on my consumer experience too, because I'm not engaging with a roofing page yet. But, I think also like businesses like that benefit from having their trucks wrapped. Yeah. From sponsoring, things around town, things that it's just being part of a community. So that's how like I would do it in that use case right there, is like, I wouldn't prioritize Instagram or TikTok. Definitely not TikTok for a roofing company. It's not lifestyle based. It's not like trend based. It's a roof. So it's pretty cut and dry. It's something people need to have a roof, in good shape to, so I think that it all just depends on like what the company is, what the objective is, and seeing where those platforms are at. So for me, where I'm in more, like our sales funnel really is content. It's relationships. It's being with people. It's, not LinkedIn ads. Like, I think if we ever ran ads, it would be search based. But I'd rather take the energy and money that we'd spend on ads and invest it into account executives who can build relationships and building new products that really solve problems that we don't have. So, is there a one size fits all for every company? No, but there are some really good practices. And I think just thinking through what's the objective, to drive traffic to our website. The strategy is, for us, is to create content, and the tactics are 1 blog a month, 3 emails a month, maybe try and post on social media, on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn 3 times a week. That's something we talk about. But I think, just really thinking about what makes sense for your business. Don't try and do something just because you see it. And don't mistake a tactic for a strategy. As we're wrapping this portion up on going back to some of those basics, I think 2 things that specifically I've heard you repeat. 1, have an objective, or know your objective.
So begin hopefully with the end in mind, or hey, if this is our result, let's try a few things to get there. So that's helpful. Actually, I'll say 3. One you just said, but not one size fits all. I think it's really easy to think that is the case. And you earlier mentioned just put in the legwork, do the work, you'll figure things out. And then thirdly, I guarantee you'll say this the rest of our conversation, but communicate clearly. And that's so valuable.
Yeah,
So,
if you confuse, you lose. That's a big one. Yeah.
that's so good. So I was actually talking with a good friend of mine named Cam Sloss. He is a business owner that sells vintage, mostly Disney clothes, but vintage clothes. So check out Slosson found on Instagram. He's here in Lexington. And as we were talking, he was asking me a couple things about marketing events. So he does a lot of pop-up shops. Chase, what would you say are some ways to market events and hear this effectively? And then 2, how do you get people to attend an event without sounding desperate or maybe even being repetitive?
It's a good question. I think this is where cross-marketing comes in. So partnering up with somebody who has a brand that you want to be associated with. So if you are, so it's vintage. So like if he went to like a local record store and said, hey, this is what I do. I would love to partner up with you and, bring this in. And I think, people are going to come in and come to the store. Just find a partner. There's actually, I forget the name of the company, but over off of Leestown, it's called Retrograde.
There's
like Retro Reworks. It's like a vintage video game store.
Okay. I'm
not sure if they're still there, but like that would be a great example to like go to them. They sell vintage N64s and, well, they're not all N64s are vintage. They just sell N64s.
Yeah.
And I go to them and I'd partner up with them, and I also would not do too much. Less is more most of the time. I know it's tough when you're starting a business, but you want to build a brand. Anthony Bourdain, who I really like a lot, he had this really great theory about like what to do when you're how to have a hit restaurant in a city is, open the first day and run out of pizza at 1:00. Serve the pizzas, but just like always make sure that there's a line. Then the next week, run out of pizza at 1:30. And then after 4 weeks of running out of pizza, you have a hit restaurant because people think about it as from a scarcity mindset. They think, okay, it's hard to get in here. We got to go get in line or we got to go there. Oh my gosh, we can get in a table there. Let's go. He said it more elegantly than I did, but I think that the meat of it is the same in the sense of less is more. If he did a quarterly pop-up and he had all this inventory that he was sitting on and he could rely on some online sales to drive some of that events, build up that social following too, that he could have more of a pop. And then eventually he could, as he builds his following, he could have more events. But yeah, that's one thing, the first thing that comes to mind. And then additionally, just creating some content. I would say TikTok would be fantastic for him. Fascinated by TikTok. I know a lot of people knock it and think it's corny, but it's really crazy how much stuff is happening on there. It's really interesting to get on there, and it's a time suck.
It can be for sure.
You get on and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm
3 hours later.
Yeah, like wait, but that's something I think is those are some examples of things that work for him. The roofing company should not be partnering with a vintage store
ever.
Yeah,
maybe.
Right,
I'm just kidding.
So it just lines up with kind of what he's about, and I think he's reaching a certain type of person, somebody who's nostalgic, somebody who likes the style of the design, that sort of stuff,
Cool beans. I'll make sure he hears that.
Oh, also one thing that he could do, it'd be kind of fun, is he could do like an outdoor like viewing of like, I don't know, like the Goofy movie or something. And he could have he could make it an event. Event marketing is so cool, because if he has a pop-up store where he just has his stuff, that's one thing. It's a store. It's a pop-up store. But if it's an event marketing, he's creating a brand experience for his customers to walk into, and to experience something that's like really special. Like, oh my gosh, this is great. So I think that's another opportunity for him to look for those unique crossover things where he might even have a piece of clothing for sale there. He's just building his brand.
That's good stuff. Well, Chase, we'll put a wrap right there for getting back to some of the basics, because we're starting to get into creativity, I'm going to say that for next time. So again, everyone, thanks for listening. If you have any messages, Chase, where can someone reach out to you and pick your brain a bit more?
They can just go to our website at buildwithbolt.com, or they can check me out on Instagram. It's just Chase Fairchild.
Well, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Awesoming's podcast. And another quick thank you to Lee Rosevear and a few members from our community who provide the music that you hear in this show. Lastly, give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, all that jazz. Or even better, come on down to our space. Come be a part of our community and get plugged in, and let's start something awesome together. You guys rock. We'll see you next time.